Welcome to our third broadcast from Philippine Expat Support Network. Tonight we're going to be covering the topic of getting sick in the Philippines, and we're currently down. We've only got the two of us at the moment. We're hoping for at least another to join us very soon, working on that. But I'll pass you over to Tim because Tim has a lot to say about this topic.
Yeah, I'm sorry to say that I've actually been sick in the Philippines for, well, far too many times. But in the last 4 years of my stay, I actually was sick twice. The first time, my experience was it just kind of came out of nowhere. And I'm not sure if expats realize it, but most of them do, especially if they hang around in provincial regions. In the Philippines, it is very common for someone to have skin diseases. I'm not sure why that is. I don't know whether it's cultural related or what, but both of my children suffer from skin problems. I have never suffered from that until I was there. And actually what happened over a period of time is it exploded and it actually magnified itself over a somewhat short period of time. When I returned there for 4 years ago, I had something kind of on my skin, but I didn't know what it was. I come to find out it was a fungal infection. That fungal infection probably wasn't the cause of what happened to me, but one day I woke up and I had a boil on me. Now this boil was not something the size of a pinhead. His boil was the size of a silver dollar. So I happened to have a friend who took me to a really good provincial doctor that happened to be the doctor in Davao Dock. He had an office out of Davao City, and I went to see him there. And very strange, but of course, I was in a provincial hospital, or I should say a doctor's office, and he wasn't used to seeing a foreigner. Nobody else was, but the boy behind me had the exact same boil. Now, he told me they're very common, but mine had, I'm not sure if you want to call it metastasized, but it actually broke. And this is where the problem got out of hand. It broke. And unfortunately, that process created more problems because it infected other parts of my skin. He helped me and he cleaned me up. And I will say it hurt. That's an understatement. He cleaned me up, and I actually tried to get myself stabilized because it was my intention to move to Cagayan de Oro. At the time, I was staying at a friend's house, and it got worse. And what happened was it exploded on me. And over a long period of time, I shouldn't say a long period of time, but over the next month or month and a half, one boil turned into 14. And I could not sit down. I could not do anything. I had to lay in bed for basically 24 hours a day. So after about the 10th visit, and these medications they were giving me were not strong enough, and this thing just got out of hand. And anyway, I ended up getting somewhat better, and I found a nice comfortable pillow, and I got on a bus and headed to Cagayan de Oro, where I lived for a short time. Unfortunately, when I got there, it was calmed down. It was getting much better, and then it turned around and then it came back and attacked me again. Then this is where things got really wrong. It got so bad. I was bleeding all over. It was coming up my back. I couldn't sit down. It was on my legs. I went to the emergency room of the biggest hospital in Cagayan de Oro, and the head doctor in the ER saw me. He gave me a very strong antibiotic called Cipro. Some people call it Ciprio, but it's called Cipro. But unfortunately, when he gave me Cipro, he accidentally gave me, he thought he was doing the right thing. He gave me 1,000 milligram pill. And what happened is today I'm allergic to Cipro because of that. What it did is I went home. He told me to go home and eat. I went home and ate. I was writing at the time for another company in Chicago, and I wrote an article, and just by luck, a girl that's my maid came along. She's not a live-in maid. She had just come in the door about 30 minutes before this, but I thought, oh, I'll take my pill, and I went ahead and took this first Cipro, and I just happened to be standing there typing at this desk, and all of a sudden I kind of like scratched my cheek. And I was typing, and I'm like, why is it? And I kept doing, and by strange luck, there happened to be a mirror to my left behind me that was on the bathroom door. And after a while, I realized after about the fourth or fifth scratch in my neck, I leaned back, and when I did, I realized I was going into toxic shock. That this thing had, of course, my whole body was rejecting it. By the time I actually got into a taxi cab and got back to the same ER, I was having a hard time catching my breath. And of course, when you're in that situation, the first thing they do is take a needle out and basically plunge it into your stomach. And that was about the worst 3 hours I had to go through while I was there. But that whole process kind of shows one thing, that, and you'll see this when I tell you the second story, but that process shows that even this man had been a ER doctor. He was a leading doctor of that hospital. I don't know whether I don't know whether Filipinos can actually take Cipro in those kind of doses, but at the time I weighed about 190 pounds, which is way more than most Filipinos, and I don't know how they would have took that Cipro. So when they gave you medication, sometimes it can be really wrong. In that case, like I say, today, I cannot take Cipro. I've actually been given Cipro in a lower dose, and I can't take it. It's just all of a sudden leaking out and small. But anyway, by the time in that situation, I looked like a balloon by the time I got to that hospital after I took that Cipro. The biggest thing that happened to me, one of the most leading parts of information about being sick in the Philippines, is that you'll hear this a lot throughout a lot of the chat rooms, a lot of Facebook pages. Everyone always says that you cannot rely on your embassy. But that's really not true, because embassies are actually there. That's why they're actually there in some cases, most cases. For me, I was living on Samal Island, and this just happened this past September. Before I even get to that point, I'll even say I was driving my motorcycle one day in Davao City. I had just come across on the ferry, and I'm starting to go down the backside along the Davao Bay, and all of a sudden I lost my balance on my motorcycle. I just kind of shook my head. And I pulled off to the side of the road, and I'm like, wow, something is seriously wrong. And I just got off, took a little break, kind of walked around, and just like I do, it's just my lifestyle is I basically got back on and pulled away. So I found the mall, and I sat down for a while, and I didn't feel really well and didn't really know why, but it's not something that's uncommon. I'm not really a sickly person. Anyway, about 3 days later, I wake up, and I lost my balance. I just fell into the wall. And I sat back down, and I went down. I was actually working for a friend at the time at a pizza shop. And for about 2 or 3 days, I kind of took it easy. Didn't really feel that great, having problems, being dizzy, didn't quite understand what was going on. I've always had blood pressure problems all my life, so I blamed it a little bit on that, and I blamed it on eating too many carbs at the time. I thought my sugar was really off. And a friend of mine saw me one day, and my eyes were really glassy and watery, and he thought that's the same problem. Anyway, I got better. I mean, I just kind of like spun myself out of it. But unfortunately, a month later in September, I think it was September 5th, I woke up one morning and I thought I had a stroke. My whole face was numb. I shouldn't say that. Today, actually, you can't tell. I've learned to live without it. The left side of my face, from back to my ear, is actually numb still, here in my lip and down my side of my face. And I also lost all feeling in my right leg, so it actually had crossed over. Now, thinking that was a stroke mentality, because strokes happen to have taken my father's life almost 20 years ago. I tried to get up, and this time vertigo was 10 times worse, and I couldn't even hold myself. So I called a friend, and he actually came and got me, and he took me off at the mall. And he took me into Davao Hospital. Now, I went to what I would call a state-owned hospital. I did that for several reasons, but I went there, and of course they admitted me. They took my blood pressure, which at the time was like 210 over 180 or some. It was just off the chart, and I was there for 3 days. But on the third day, I finally did something that's kind of calmly going away. Today it is anyway. I finally told the nurse, "Can I talk to the doctor?" And when he came, he was just a young man. I says, "Could you please sign me out?" I says, "Because it's apparent that I actually know more information than your nurses and you do combined." I says, "Look, it's a common place to have this and this and this if you're having these problems." They diagnosed me as having a stroke. When I was checked out of there, I went to a really good hospital, which is San Pedro Hospital in Davao, by the way. I went into San Pedro and met up with a lady who had been in the state of Texas for quite some time, but she had moved back to Davao. And anyway, her Western teaching, she gave me a couple of tests, and she says, excuse me, I think you have, she goes, "I believe you have multiple sclerosis. I think you have the early stages of multiple sclerosis." Though they still think I have that. That may be a total misdiagnosis as of right now, because nobody seems to know what's wrong with me here. But anyway, this is where the embassy comes into play, because I knew at that point I was totally broke, paying this, paying that, doing this, doing that. I went through everything. I had no real way of asking for money at home. My mother's 71 years old. She lives on a fixed income. My sister couldn't help me, and the one friend that I do have a business type relationship with in Baltimore, Maryland, he said, "I can't help you because I'd do anything for you, you know that," and it just didn't work out. Anyway, I called the embassy and told them what was happening to me, and of course they already knew about me, because it's kind of no secret who I am, and I've never really registered with the embassy. I'm not that kind of person to do that, but I do think it's a good idea sometimes for some people, but I never did that. And over a process that was fairly difficult, I will say, it takes a lot of phone calls, a lot of talking. You have to give up 5 people's names that they will call for you, and those people have to basically say or tell the truth, and the truth is that they cannot afford to help you. They cannot afford to help you either get out of the Philippines or to buy you a ticket, or even partially that. Sometimes they will accept partially, and I'll tell you why that is. But in the long run, they actually paid for my flight. They sent me a ticket for Philippines Airline to actually get me to Manila. By the way, I could barely walk. This whole thing took my whole walking ability out of me. I was walking with a cane, but I could not walk very, very normal. I mean, it was very difficult for me. I did get into the airplane, and of course, I was using a wheelchair. They were actually helping me. I got to Manila. And there I ran into a few problems because it was right before Christmas, so there was a little bit of disarray. I had actually had a ticket to leave on December 14th when something went totally wrong with my paperwork, and they had a 4-day delay, and I got stuck there, and they had to repurchase the ticket, which created a bigger debt than they wanted to and bigger debt than I wanted to. Now, nothing from the embassy is free, and so I want to stress that to people that if the embassy helps you, you owe your embassy. Now, whether that's true with other embassies, I don't know, but the United States Embassy, I'm indebted to them. I'm indebted to them for a total today of $2,100. Now, why it's $2,100 is because they had to buy medical insurance for me on an airplane in case I went into whatever, toxic shock, if I actually had a stroke. Because there were so many ifs and ands, I paid, or I should say they paid, $260 some for what I would call flight medical insurance. Now, that insurance only lasted for an open window of 30 days. But when I arrived in Manila, they have a hotel for you. The American Embassy has a hotel in Ermita. When I was there was probably 10 other guys there also doing the same thing. Nobody was in my position. Nobody was sick. But guys had just lost everything. I mean, they lost all. There was one family there that had 5 children that really was bad, and they were at the point where the embassy couldn't actually help them because there was too many problems. The embassy will not help 100% of the people. So when you hear that, a lot of people are right when they say that. But there's so many fallacies with the reality of what the embassy does and doesn't do for you. It's unbelievable. You have to look at it this way. A lot of guys would fly into Manila, have fun for 1 or 2 months, and go to the embassy and expect them to bail them out and send them home. So there's a lot of games being played and have been played over a long period of time. So everything that you do is scrutinized 101%. So just when you think you're done giving everything you can give, be ready to give about 10% more, because that's just how it works. They helped me get out of the Philippines. I will admit I was behind on my visa. Now, they also help you with that. So here's another fallacy that you'll hear in a lot of the chat rooms. People say that you can be arrested if you're behind on your immigration. Yeah, that's true, because you have broken a law of some sort, whether that's, it's not a heinous crime or anything. But at the same time, that reality is that I was given, then this is true with the American Embassy, and I do believe this is true with a lot of other ones, because there was other guys there in the Bureau of Immigration when I arrived there, and I don't know where they came from. What they do is they ask the immigration on your behalf after you send them a letter. The immigration, you have to write a handwritten letter saying or stating your situation. They check you and check to see when the last time you had checked in. And they basically take the information from the American Embassy and they try to put it together, factual situation, and they say, so in my situation, of course, they said yes, because they realized this guy's sick, I'm in trouble, and I'm not playing games. So they approved me. That process takes about 1 month. So in my case, it became a problem because what happened, I'm sick. I'm really sick. I'm doing everything to stay alive, and I have to wait a month for the approval. So that process became a little bit of a mess. And by the time I get to Manila, here's a delay because something happened wrong in my paperwork, and it's almost Christmas, and I'm just trying to get out of there, and a little bit of a disaster for me. But I have to say that again. Your embassy is there. They're there to help you. They're not there to hurt you. People use that excuse, and you hear it constantly, and it's just not true. I owe a lot to the American Embassy, and actually my one person that took care of my entire time, all my accounts, the flights, everything, she was a Filipino. And she told me, she goes, you know what, you're my first person. I never worked with anyone before. This is my first time. And I was like, wow, you know, it actually went very smooth, except for that one little glitch. And it actually is a pretty, it's actually a pretty neat thing. Now, in order for you to ever have to fly again and ever use that process again, you must actually be paid back. In other words, I'll have to put that in different terms. When I came home, they actually stamped my passport that it was only valid for 5 more days. That gave me a 5-day window to get home and get down here to the state of Florida. And then my passport went dead. So when people say there's 2 different kinds of listings in the Philippines, there's a black list and there's a brown list. Now, people say there is no such thing as a brown list. Well, okay, we'll just we'll override that. And how I'll override it is with reality. And the reality is, a blacklist means that you're never coming back. It means that you've probably committed a heinous crime or did something terribly wrong, and you're gone forever. And a brown list means that there's, once you pay that process back, you pay the immigration, you then have a hearing, and that hearing determines whether you're allowed back in or not. Now, under those hearing terminologies, which I'm getting a little off the beaten path, under those hearings, basically, they look at if you have family, if you're married, if you own property. I don't care if you can't own the property or not. The process is if you own a condo, if you own a home, if you've never committed a crime, if there's no warrants for you, if you've never been in court, if you've never been in any trouble at all. That's what they look at. They don't look at anything else, really. But that hearing determines your eligibility to come back. So if you want to say, yes, I'm blacklisted, okay, well, let's go with that. But I am actually brownlisted because I have the ability to present my defense in the reality that I have 2 children in the Philippines, and I technically am still married. Anyway, I'll use that process and pull that away from that. So back to the same reality is the embassy is always there to help you. People will tell you what you need and what you don't need. There's always this fallacy that there's people in the embassy that are against you. They're not against you. They're trying to help you. That was their job. All you have to do is find the right person and present it as the truth. The problem is most of the time there's too many untruths being played, and that's what they run into. And anyway, that process is quite unique. I'm actually here because of the United States Embassy. And that's pretty much it for me. I didn't have any insurance in the Philippines. So I also will tell you that the United States Embassy helped me take care of a bill at the first hospital by actually using a process. And I tried to find the correct name for it, and I don't know it, but it's all in many provincial hospitals, they have this. It's an indigenous type system that allows you to, I don't want to say this, bypass paying your bill. So when people do say that they're actually stuck in a hospital, well, there is ways around that, and I'm living proof. Only I happen to be probably one of the few white men that ever used the process. I owed the hospital quite a bit of money. I had bought all my drugs and everything else, and my saline and everything, of course. But anyway, long story short, I sent my girlfriend over to this department, and again, I'm sorry, I don't realize what the name of the department was, and they forgave my entire bill. But that was on the advice of the embassy. The hospital, or the embassy, did speak to the hospital on my behalf, and anyway, it was completely taken care of. Anyway, that's kind of my whole story in one nutshell. But I always try to use that because I always try to help people say, go to your embassy. If you're telling me the truth, people come to me all the time because of all the sites that I have on Facebook, plus my website. I just give the advice, try to go to your embassy and speak to them by phone or however. If you're sick, you're broke, you have to be really broke, not fake broke. You have to be really broke. And if you're behind on your immigration, I stress the idea that you should go to the embassy that you are from and have them help you, because without their help, There is no dismissal of those fees, and you cannot get out of the Philippines without that. Chris, you have anything to say about that, or any thoughts?
I was just about to give James. Oh, James is back.
Is
James.
there?
Yep, I think he is. Hello, James.
We have his picture.
Okay. I'll just talk a little bit then.
All right.
Okay, experiences of getting sick in the Philippines, and specifically seriously sick, as in hospitalized. No, no such experience there. I haven't really been sick in the last decade or more. I can't remember being sick other than the occasional food poisoning. I think that's happened once or twice.
Oh, that's happened to everybody.
Well, the one time I got it, and I think it was serious, really serious, was in Angeles City, and I visited a Turkish restaurant at SM Clark. It looked clean. Yeah, I could tell. That was a culprit. So,
Yeah.
Doesn't that surprise you? It doesn't have to be the dirty-looking street vendor.
Nope.
This was a very clean-looking establishment in a upmarket shopping centre.
I tell other people all the time.
Now, interestingly enough, I have had a couple of. Have to be particularly careful, especially if you get any even tiny abrasions in the Philippines. It's to do with the humidity. It's a tropics. They will get infected very rapidly. They can get out of hand very fast. So as soon as you get even the slightest little scratch or abrasion or sore, clean it up, treat it, and keep it protected. I've had some, over 10 years I've had complaints, I suppose. I got a very serious sort of skin rash on my hands, and this plagued me for the best part of a year. The skin would dry and start to crack, and it would get worse.
That happens with my elbows, believe it or not. I don't know what it is, but my skin and my whole body, I'm always a lot lighter weighted when I'm there, of course, because I eat completely different. For some reason, I don't desire a lot of Filipino food, but I do like it. But I try to stay away from the fat part of it. But as soon as that fat isn't coming to me, my elbows get so cracked they'll bleed. And I don't know whether
it was. I traced this back. I didn't realize it at the time. I love to cook. It's by necessity. The Filipino food I'm not so fond of. When Filipinos try to cook our food, the ingredients they use, the shortcuts that are taken, even by foreign-owned establishments, and the substitutions. It's just horrible. So I've actually become quite a good cook in my own right. Maybe I'm delusional, but yeah, people seem to like it. But anyway, I was just peeling potatoes and carrots and garlic and ginger. Mainly the garlic and ginger, I believe, has turned out to be the culprit. Now, I did go to a doctor. He prescribed something that was totally ineffectual. It seemed to make it worse. And then I did the research. I looked it up, and I said, "Well, this is wrong." The only thing that seemed to work was when I used I've got to think of the terminology of this, a steroid cream. Have an effect on it, but the absolute solution was, and I realised the culprit, and the culprit was something in the vegetables which I was peeling.
Oh wow!
So the best thing was I just said, "Well, I love to cook, but you lot can peel."
I never heard of it.
Yeah, it got so bad that it bled at some stages, and when it's worse. And I just realised that when I was going away on work, I was sent up to Hull for a period in, where's that? Oh, I can't remember the name. Anyway, I was away, staying in motels, etc., working. So, and I wasn't peeling vegetables, and it came good. Okay, I have one experience, and then I'm going to quickly go across to James. It's not necessarily related directly to what we've been talking about, but it's related to getting sick in the Philippines, and this is an important lesson and a lot we can discuss from it. This happened back, I can remember the year, it was 1989. That was the year my first son was born in the Philippines, in General Santos City. Now, I was pretty, way back in 89, I was fairly naive still.
Yeah.
And I'd been to the Philippines. It was probably my third or fourth trip or something like that. And of course, I went over there for the birth of my first child, and arrived at the clinic. It's probably a hospital today, but it was called a clinic back then. And it was a two-story building in a sort of L shape with this like a foyer and balconies. And I do remember being able to watch people coming and throwing, and there was a guy brought in on a stretcher. Now, I can't actually remember whether my son had been born at this particular time or whether this is just prior to relevant anyway. So I actually asked somebody about the person on the stretcher, who was sent away actually. You know, like, we can't help you, go away.
Oh, yeah.
So I said, well, what was that about? And it turns out that they had come to the hospital a week or 2 weeks prior to that with a sick relative that had been bit by a rabid dog. And what was 2 weeks ago, they were told that they needed X amount for life-saving injections and to come back with the money. Well, it took them like 1 or 2 weeks or whatever it was to come back with the money, only to come back to be told, well, it's useless now, it's too late. The injection won't help. Just take him off to die. So, wow, that is reality. And that's
shocking, yeah. Yeah. When I forgot to tell you that when I was when I had the boils, they wanted to admit me into that hospital, and I refused, because what happened was he says, I need 17,600 pesos to admit you, and I'm like, I'll stay in the ER, thank you. And I did. I stayed there for 3 hours, and I got my whole body. By that time they threw that needle in me, I basically could breathe. I caught my breath. It was pretty close though. But anyway, my point is 3 hours later, I walked out of the ER and my whole bill was like 1,700 pesos or 1,800 pesos.
I have an experience which quite a few people can relate to. They'll at least have heard of it. And this is where you're in a hospital, and you've already touched on this, and I'm just going to tell another little story and you can give me some more feedback. I had a child born in the Philippines about 7 years and 9 months ago yesterday, actually. The mother had the child in the hospital, and it was a birthing hospital, and it came early actually, and I'd already transferred some funds, but it always takes about two or 3 days, especially over a weekend. It was over a weekend, so the funds were going to be there like Monday or Tuesday, and I was flying out like the day like Wednesday or something. I had already booked an international flight at that stage, and so the mother's just given birth, my girlfriend of 8 years, and she's in the hospital, and we want to take the baby home, and I don't have the money. So apparently, the terminology you might have been looking for was a promissory note, or was that? No, you got let off on another thing. But anyway, there's a provision which is a promissory note, and apparently they're obligated to accept it. And it's apparently illegal for them to hold somebody in hospital over a civil debt like that. It is paramount to being kidnapping. But the reality of the Philippines is those who understand the law and are in a position to defend their rights don't need to. They've got the money to pay the bill anyway. So it's the poor people who are basically ignorant and not able to have any legal representation or access to the law, or let alone understand anyway, who are sort of told that they can't leave until you pay the bill.
Yeah.
Well, I was trying to argue the promissory note, and then I decided I had to use some of my resources, and I was new to the city, but like most cities in the Philippines, it had a Masonic lodge. So I got in contact with the local Masonic lodge, and a guy came out to see me at the hospital virtually within the hour. And what I hoped and expected was that they would be able to exert some influence. You know, maybe they've connected with a hospital or doctors or the like, and convince them to accept this promissory note just for a few days. But they just talked briefly to the hospital, and then he said, "Oh, hop in the car, brother," and he just took me around to another guy who, they hardly know me from a bar of soap, and he just hands me over. It was about 18,000 pesos, and that's all it was, and hands it over to me and takes me back there. Wow. So that's an amazing level of trust.
They tend to do that with foreigners. I think a lot of times that the foreign mentality, to see a foreigner ask for help, I think the trust level there is much higher, because I can't remember if I've ever really run into that or not. I'm going to say no, but my son was born in the Philippines in a birthing center outside. It actually was a house 5 blocks away from where I lived at the time. And I was a little nervous because the girl at the time, her name is Irene, my son's mother. She's very tiny. She's a very small person. She's only 10 years younger than me. But
suggest we're going to run out of time, and I just saw that James is online. If you can, let's give him a go. James, are you there?
No, I don't think he's there.
Okay.
Nope. He's gone.
Hello, I'm back. Can you hear me?
Oh, there he is.
Can you hear me clear?
Yes.
Oh, God. Sorry, guys.
You talk. It's over to you, James.
Okay, just interrupt me if you lose me suddenly, huh? I'm not just talking to myself.
Sure.
Yeah, my main experience with being ill or injured in the Philippines was a couple of years ago, 2013, I think it was. I had quite a nasty motorbike accident, and I pretty much tore my left foot in half. I don't know if you guys have seen the pictures or not, but
nope.
No, don't want to.
Yeah, neither me either.
It's absolutely horrific. And
oops, his bandwidth is gone.
yeah, I'll So when I arrived at the local hospital, they could clearly see that my foot was pretty much torn in half down the middle. I mean, you could see the bones, you could see everything. From a country like the was asked me before they actually did anything. I mean, there's me let out, my foot's bleeding, and I'm almost on the point of, and then they start asking me what my name is, my address, etc. Do I have money? Before they'd even give me basic painkillers.
Mm.
You still hear me, guys?
Yes, keep going.
Yep.
Yeah. So that was the biggest shock for me. At the time, pretty much somebody who I knew there, a Filipino guy, who came around, sort of said to the woman, "Hey, oh no, no, he's okay, he's okay, he's got enough, he's got plenty of money. Just give him what he needs." And then they started giving me painkillers, etc. Um, the bottom line was I was in hospital for 2 days, I think and they operated on my foot. They put it back together with steel pins. Um, which I had to have removed at a later date. But the steel pins are actually healed. Um, the whole thing cost me about pesos, I think, of which probably a third, almost 5,000 anesthesia. I had an epidural in my spine so that they could work on my foot. So yeah, it would have been a different kind of anesthetic. But they advised me to have the one in my spine. But it was actually a good experience. So the biggest shock for me was the fact that I rocked up the hospital,
Oh, you're
obviously
going underwater,
in
buddy.
visible agony and in a very, very bad.
Okay, James.
We're
Stop.
losing him.
Oh, I lost him anyway.
You know,
Can I talk
I'm here.
about? Oh, okay. Help.
Go
We're just.
Go on,
We got.
carry on, Chris. Carry on.
Hello.
he's underwater.
He's underwater. Okay, health insurance. I know a couple of people have expressed opinions about it already.
Yeah, carry on. Carry on, carry on.
Okay. Oh, well, let's a quickie and then I'll throw it over to everybody. I did have an experience with health insurance with men in the Philippines. I did have one of my sons get a medical condition. We went up to see about getting it treated. It was so obvious that they were over servicing ridiculously, and I was just trying to say this is quite silly. It's only X, Y, Z. I won't go into the details of it, and they were just going. All right, I'll cut to the chase. I put the claims in, which were ridiculous claims, but probably not that much, and they were rejected by the PhilHealth, I think it was, PhilHealth, who said, oh no, that's a pre-existing medical condition, which was ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous to claim. And they just dug their feet in. So I found, I'm finishing up, I found local health insurance useless. Okay, James, are you there still?
I've got PhilHealth. Yeah, can you hear me?
Barely.
Hello, can you hear me?
Now you're clear.
Keep talking.
Okay, I'm just gonna talk for a bit, guys. If you just... Yeah, okay. I've got PhilHealth through my wife. I know you can to our last child. It took a care of about 7,000 or 8,000 pesos off the bill, which was, I mean, I've only PhilHealth. I don't know what it's like for anything other than giving birth, though.
Something you probably can't argue with as a pre-existing condition or something.
I think the problem with the Philippines is that they look at birth at a total different way. That's why today, if you're poor, childbirth is free. Even cesarean sections are free.
That's right.
So the problem
That's
with
right.
that is they accept that, and that's their, I hate to use this, but that's their doctrine under a Catholic rule. So when it comes to medical issues, I'm not sure how they accept that or what they do with it, because, like I was saying, my wife at the time was very small. my son was very big. She was huge. I got a little nervous because I thought it was going to be one of them running her to a hospital. She had the baby naturally, and my whole bill was 5,800 pesos, and I paid that bill, of course, and gladly. So I'm not really sure outside of that what they do and what they don't do for actually people, because I think there's a lot of that rejection, as Chris said, with they just reject and reject and reject. They remind me of American. That's what they do in America. Which, by the way, since I've returned back to the United States, I've been in the hospital 3 times. I actually had a heart attack when I returned here, which is probably, in the short run, probably some of the issues I was having in the Philippines. I have run up 100, and I just received the bill here yesterday again, 194,000 American dollars for 3 visits.
Wow.
Yeah. So, ouch.
I mean, for me, hospital bills and insurance, it's all totally alien to me.
Yeah.
I've never had insurance my entire life. Do you know what I mean? I was kind of brought up under the knowledge that if I get ill or whatever, even if it's cancer, even if it's like a stroke, even if it's a heart attack, whatever, even if it's a long-term condition, I'm going to be looked after right through up until even past the physiotherapy. I mean, that's one of the reasons we pay such high tax in the UK.
Yeah.
But now I'm here in the Philippines. The hospital, if them. I know that it's very expensive though when you get more serious conditions that go on for months or years. You can run up huge.
Oh, I think he slipped away there. I think what he was trying to say is there's several hospitals in the Philippines that are westernized. Several in Manila, one or two in Davao. Every city has them, and they can be quite expensive, like they are in Western worlds. They're nowhere near. I just had a friend had a gallbladder removed, and it turned into a 5 or 6 hour operation because it actually had grown so huge it was actually stuck to other organs. And when he was released, he paid 330,000 pesos. In America, that would have been the admission. So, he was happy to pay, and he had it done in a westernized hospital in Manila. By the way, that was St. Joseph's, and he's very happy. He's a good man, and he's been there quite some time. He owns a business in Manila, and so I think there's a lot of that going on. I also wanted to touch on the idea that a common problem in the Philippines is actually pink eye. Have you ever had pink eye, Chris?
I have, actually, and
it's a very common problem.
Personally gave it to me too.
Yeah, I'll tell you what happened to me is I was in the Philippines early on. This was only my 2nd year. I bought a new motorcycle. I bought a brand new Kawasaki. Decided to start to travel, but while I was in Davao was under a ton of construction like it is today, but at that time it was just all the main roads just seemed to be under construction. I went to the doctors. My pink eye was so bad, my eyes actually went shut. I could not open my eyes. When I went to the doctors, there was a woman there. She examined me, and of course, while she's looking at me, she, of course, just my luck, she goes, that's the worst case I've ever seen. I'm going, oh, just my luck. I had to buy a special solution. It cost 3,000 some pesos, and at the time I thought, you know what, I'm not very comfortable with this. But she was right, because within about 72 hours I could actually open my eyes for the first time. She told me that it was from riding motorcycles, and she says, I hate to tell you, but you probably were in front of a big truck and the sewage may have actually splashed into your face and you didn't realize it. So raw sewage in a situation like that gave me the pink eye. Now, on the second time I had pink eye, I was invited to a place all the way up almost in Surigao. I was invited to this village that took 3.5 hours on a motorcycle out along the cliff along the edge of the ocean. It was an incredible ride, and it was an incredible town. there was only about 500 people living in this little village. I can't even explain it. It was just phenomenal. Probably one of the most unique places I've ever been in the Philippines. I walk in, and there's a dim light underneath this house in this small, cool area, and I couldn't see. And as I walk in, I'm sitting there, and they offer me a beer, and I drink. They give me a glass, and I'm drinking, and all of a sudden, I look, and I realize, oh my God, everybody's got pink eye. And I go, oh my God, what? And they're like, oh yeah, everybody in the village has it. Needless to say, in like 72 hours.
Very contagious. Fingers.
Yeah, very, very funny. But also another situation where I had is I went to Kidapawan City, which is an area that I really, really like. It's a little dangerous there, but it's just absolutely stunning. It's on the backside of Mount Apo, and sat down at a small little bar that sat along the roadway, which is very common for me. I have no problem with that whatsoever. And of course, I drank contaminated water. Now, I had a motorcycle at the time, and I drove back to Davao, but on the way back to Davao, I was like, oh God, there's something terribly wrong with me. And I barely made it home, and for 3 days, it was coming out every end, my ears, my eyes, and every other hole. So it was a big mess.
Listen, people, it's 5 minutes to go. Oh, James just dropped out.
Yeah.
It's 5 minutes to go. I was going to see if James wanted to. If James pops back in, we'll certainly just stop and see if he can get a word in.
I'll try to watch him in my screen here.
We've covered quite a lot of topics, but there's probably a lot more.
Yeah,
and yeah, we'll have some different ideas to approach this perhaps in coming weeks. We certainly wanted to make it more interactive. We want a lot more feedback from viewers on, and what we're going to do is try and have a question time at the end. So we're going to introduce that next week. There's a provision to do that, and we'll master it during the week. So, yep, that will be included. I'm just hoping James will come back. Is there any other quick things that you'd like to cover in just 1 or 2 minutes?
I think what I would like to do is because there's the misconception of the embassy and other fallacies that are repeated. I think, yeah, he's back. Are you there, buddy? James.
Okay, if you're here, come on, James.
Okay. What I'm going to do is I'm going to write an extended article about what my process is so that people can see it in writing and understand it a little bit better. So what I've said here today, I'm going to repeat in this week's or next week's article, or actually this week's article, so that there's just no misunderstanding of what I've said.
Okay, James, you've got 2 minutes. Are you there?
Oh, he's gone again.
Okay, another quick thing, and I wanted really James to be in on this, is that we promised to put some links in the on the page last week, and we haven't done that. And I've had a couple of people ask where the links are, so we better remember that.
All right.
And I think James had to provide a link for that too, didn't he? At least one of them.
Yeah.
Okay. What else can we say about getting sick in the Philippines? I mean, you've talked about. There's a lot of horror stories about Philippine hospitals. The level of hygiene is scary in some places, and there are some very well-run, clean, world-class hospitals, but there are some that are not, and I think everybody is aware of that. So it's not about criticising Philippine hospitals in general, but especially if you're out in the province, or if you're certainly going to a more affordable hospital, not just the standard of the doctors, the available medicines, things they don't have, basic things they don't have. You'd be amazed. James, are you there?
That's actually
No.
a good thing to touch. He's not there. That's a good thing to touch on. I lost a friend. His name is Ian Fredericks. He was from Matalam, which is near Kidapawan City. I lost him several years ago, actually many years ago now. I kind of lose track of time. And what happened is he had an intestinal problem where he could not eat items with seeds. And one day he made, a friend of his, I should say, made a strawberry sundae, and he didn't think. And unfortunately, strawberries have very tiny seeds in them. They became lodged inside of his intestine, and they ran him to Kidapawan City, which is about 18 kilometers away. He went into renal failure. The medication was at Davao Dock in the hospital, and they put it in a transporter van. And before the transporter van arrived, he died, and he went into total renal failure, and he passed away at a very young age. Well, when I say young, he was 61 or 62 at the time, which is still young. When you say that, that's a big problem. When you live in the province, you have an issue with that. If he would have been in Davao, he would still be alive today, and I know that.
Yeah, definitely. So we've talked about how doctors have had different experiences with doctors misprescribing things, and I'm sure there's a lot of horror stories about that too. But misdiagnosis is also, you've touched on it possibly with the MS. I think they perhaps read these things and just want to find somebody to impress, you think sometimes. Touched on health insurance. We've touched on dealing with infections and the like. I actually published a little video this week on the health theme, and that was about getting a pedicure in the Philippines. And as was pointed out to me, and as I realised I should have mentioned during the video, was that one of the major contributing factors to getting infections during pedicures and manicures is the lack of hygiene with regard to the utensils being used. They don't really sterilise them properly. It's enough to actually put you off using any at all, using any services at all, I mean, to get pedicures or manicures. So yes, I was remiss in not talking about that, because that is a warning in itself, and that goes right through with all sorts of things and practices in hospitals too.
Yes, very much. But I will say, in situations like Davao Dock Hospital, when I first arrived in the Philippines, a very close friend of mine, who was a Filipino, he died while playing basketball. Actually, I take that back. He had a stroke while he was having. Wait a minute. Yes, he did. He had a stroke first. They ran him to Davao Dock, and he had a heart attack while he was on the table. He laid there for several days, and he died. But when I went to go see him, I too was very shocked how unsterilized that hospital was. It was extremely, extremely dirty. Now you go there today, they've been funded over a period of time and have expanded about 3 times. And today, I must say that I am thoroughly impressed at how stunning the inside of that hospital is today.
Okay, we've actually reached our time. Yes, so it was basically just mainly the two of us, and a little bit from James, and a little bit of underwater talk. We'll be back again next week. James, you're just back in time to say goodbye if we can hear you. All right. Okay, well, I will say goodbye, and
thank you very much.
And I'll stop the broadcast. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you, sir.